Welcome to the Business Transformation Institute's podcast. You're listening to our podcast series where we interview change leaders, and we try and get people who are local to Arizona, but we also try to find people who are from outside Arizona. So I think right now is probably as far outside Arizona as we can go. We have people from Copenhagen. We have people who are from Copenhagen but also from Arizona in the room, so I'll introduce them in a minute. I have to do the dirty work though. You can find us on our social media, on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. My name is David Lee, and I'm the Executive Director here. Today is joining me, and this is going to be the challenge, Gitte.
Yes.
Pfeffer.
Yes.
Klaus Meyer and Camilla Jensen.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah.
We practiced before, man. So just taking on a little bit about each of these folks. So Gitte is, originally you worked in the pharma industry in management consulting.
Correct.
But now you were focused on, and now you're focused on organizational change and cultural change. But you do it in a very unique way. You come from the Copenhagen Business School, where you got your Executive MBA, and from the Scandinavian International Management Institute. And we're going to talk about how unique your approach is today. We also have with us Klaus. He's a facilitator, an award-winning designer of business simulations. I'd like to know what that means. And a complex his passion is transforming complex subject into engaging and interactive formats that support real-life behavioral change. Has a master's degree in psychology from the University of Roskilde.
Roskilde.
Almost there.
You said no D. Anyway, all right.
That's right.
So tell me a little bit about, you're both from Workz. Can you tell us a little bit about Workz and how you, what you've developed there and how it works with change management?
Sure. You want to start?
If you say a little bit about Workz,
Yes.
maybe I'll say a bit about our approach.
Yep. So Workz is Copenhagen-based change agency. We've been around for 10 plus years, and we focus very much on change and leadership development. So how we can help leaders become better at dealing with change, dealing with taking employees, you can say, more smooth through a change and minimize resistance when going through a change. The human brain does not like change,
Except for some of us crazy people who make change just for change's sake.
Yeah, but then you're probably involved in that decision yourself, and then it's a completely different ball game.
Yeah.
For most employees, they don't make that decision, and then going through a change is often not very comfortable. And this is where Workz has a particular focus. This is on the people aspect of change. So not so much about how do you design the whole change in the organization in itself, but what it does to people and how we can help people go through a change, whether it's being a huge transformation or minor changes going on in everyday workplace.
And what I like about it is you have a very unique way of doing it. It's not just kind of the process flow approach. It's about involvement. Tell us a little about what you mean by involvement.
Well, I think our basic thesis when we work with change, we work with leadership, is that we don't have all the answers. That we can't stand there in front of people who have 20 years of experience in airplane or pharma or whatever industry it might be, and tell them this is how you're going to do it, because they are the experts in their field. So our approach is by using game-based training, by using dialogue tools, we draw out the tacit knowledge in the room and have people become more aware of how they should do it. So always when we use games, when we use dialogue tools, it's always with a perspective to reality, a perspective as to how is this going to impact real life.
Okay, so before we move on, that's very interesting. We're going to actually experience some of that tonight here with our group, but I want to bring in Dr. Jensen, who did her doctoral research focused on serious gameplay methods for accelerating knowledge transfer and innovation in organizations. You utilize the Lego serious play to facilitate material deliberation and out-of-the-box thinking.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. You have your master's degree in industrial design and engineering from Aalborg
Aalborg.
Okay.
Yeah.
University
you're
in
getting there.
Denmark, I'm getting there. And in 2007, you moved to Arizona. That's very interesting. To work on hybrid learning and play experiences, and at ASU, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, you worked in the Arts, Media, and Engineering program on interactive robotics, developed games for physical and cognitive rehabilitation in the biomedical informatics program, and served as a core member of the tech team in the Decision Theater, which is fun because part of my job, I get to say things that I don't understand at all, and I didn't understand much of what I was saying. So you want to give us a little bit of background on what all this means?
Oh, it's all in the past. Yeah. Well, it's a lot about the engagement piece again.
Okay.
Because it's a lot about, it's not technology for the sake of technology. A lot of that sounds very technical, right?
Yeah.
But my focus is really about creating that engagement that we were also speaking about just before. It's about the interaction and the interplay between people in an organization, or about driving that type of engagement that really motivates people to make a change in their life, or to be more physically active. For instance, in the case of the physical rehabilitation, I also worked on a robotics project for Lego where it was about motivating children to be more physical during recess breaks in school time, because that it accelerates learning when they then sit down, they're able to take in more learning.
Okay.
So it's not technology for the sake of technology, it's more about what can it help us achieve.
So what can it help us achieve? Using these game approaches to change and sort of involvement, what can it actually help us achieve?
One of the things that at least our approach to games does very well is that does two things. It's basically, when we design games, we design them as dialogue tools. We design them as a way of having a conversation. And when you, for example, we have a game called Wall Breakers where you go through a change process. Throughout that game, you're going to be working in a group. You're going to have a lot of the conversations about the pivotal parts of a change process. How do we lead people through this? We could ask people to have that conversation. Just sit down and say, okay, talk about this. But by scaffolding it with the game, we make sure that people have the conversation that is going to be the most valuable.
Explain scaffolding. What do you mean by scaffolding?
I mean that the game acts as a scaffold, making the right kinds of conversations possible. Having people talk about what should we focus on in the implementation phase of a change process. If we have an employee who has this kind of preference, how would they react to this kind of leadership? So by doing the actions in the game and discussing them in the group, you end up having discussions that is also relevant to real life.
Okay.
What we also see is that what normally people, when they are going through a big challenge, they can be a little bit proud. So it can be very hard for them to tell if there's something they can't do. So let's say a leader has to take their people through a change process, and it can be very embarrassing saying, I've never done this before. When we have these simulation tools, we can create this safe environment where it's okay to fail, because the whole idea is that you test strategies and you simulate and you learn and you try again and again. And then suddenly it's okay. And then you peel off these layers of pride and you open up for the learning, and the learning is just accelerated when you are in a safe zone like that.
And I think that's one of the things that we do with our games, is that we let people create hypotheses and test them in our games. They create a hypothesis saying, if I were this kind of leader who did this kind of stuff at this point with these people, I think this would happen. And they get an immediate feedback from the game saying, well, no, that's not what happens. Everybody hates you now. If that happened in real life, you'd have a problem.
Yeah, I've seen that happen in real life.
When you do that in real life, you have a problem. But you have, as Gitte says, a safe zone in the game to experiment and to become better at this before you start doing it for real.
So it's sort of like in an innovation environment where they set up a safe-to-fail environment to try different innovations, and by doing them all simultaneously, see which ones have more predictable outcomes, and then you move it to the next level, and then you invest more, and then...
When you think about it, it makes good sense. Look at the US Navy or pilots. You don't let them fly a big airplane without having done significant amounts of simulation and testing and trying this out before the real deal.
Yeah.
So why should it be any different for leaders?
Yeah. And to your point, a lot of times leaders are taking on a big change. It's probably, they might do this once or twice in their career. Although I'm starting to think, in one of the themes that we've been promoting out of the BTI is that there's a difference between building change as a competency of leadership to the point where it's almost becoming where leading change is leadership today. Because there is so much of it and it's happening.
The only constant is change? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, even more than that, almost to the point where if you're not leading change, are you actually leading anything?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you don't want to stay in a status quo.
Yeah, and there's almost no such thing as that. So, okay, so let's talk about practicality, because I'll just bring out the elephant in the room first. If I'm in an environment where I have a lot of people working on a lot of projects and they got to get those projects done, or my timelines are going to be met, and I've got budgets to meet, and I've got clients to satisfy and all that, and I say, I'm going to pull you out to play some games. How does that, how do I justify, as a leader, how do I justify that? Why would I do that? Why would I pull people off of, those type of daily activities and allow them to play games?
Well, I think you should start by not saying, I'm going to pull you out to play games. And then I think you should focus on the simulation part instead, and preparing for the real deal. So testing, trial and error, those kind of things, and make it more engaging than saying, now we're going to go into this conference room and we're going to kill you with 300 slides, and when we're done, we expect you to go execute.
So I've communicated now, because I've shown you a presentation, go get it done.
Yeah.
That's not the way to do it?
Well, it seems like people are better at remembering if they were actually involved in talking about this than if you say, well, it was on slide 245, so go do. So it's a more powerful way of involving people in what they're going to do, and I think that's one of the approaches we always have when we talk with our clients is that they are not taking people out of rotation to play a game. They are training them to be better at their job. So we are always very focused on what's the output here, what's the learning goals, what's the desired output that we want people to walk away with, what are they going to know more about, what are they going to do differently when they come back. For me, that's the only thing that matters.
So when I'm flying a plane in a simulator, which I've done, okay, it's a real, like I'm flying out of LaGuardia. It's a real situation. Are the games taking real situations that are actually active projects or programs that are going on in the organization and applying them in the games, or how does the simulation work?
That depends on the games. A lot of what we do are bespoke solutions where we tailor-make something for. We work a lot with the pharma industry, where we, for example, train them to handle new product launches. When we make games about that, that's about that specific product launch. It's about who are you going to talk with, what's your tactics, who are your most important stakeholders, what's the property of this drug you are launching, who are the competitors, and those are all real because it's preparing them for a situation they're going to be working with within 6 months. And then we have our what we call off-the-shelf product that is more generic, that is working with more generalized scenarios about change or leadership or stakeholder management.
So it's more about building skill sets.
Yes.
And mindsets.
Yes.
So now I want to turn to you, Camilla. So you do Lego Serious Play.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about it. That work, is it the same type of thing, or is it different than what we're talking about with Workz?
It can be used for change management processes in the sense that it helps you tap into the resources in the room. I usually say in a Lego Serious Play workshop that the knowledge is already in the room. That's why Klaus mentioned that we don't come with all of the solutions, all of the answers. It's not that kind of consulting. It's more about helping an organization to activate the knowledge that's already present in their organization. And there can be various reasons why that doesn't come out. It might be a company culture that doesn't allow for it. But what some of these processes, and Lego Serious Play is one of them, allows for is that everybody in the room has a voice. So it's a structured turn-taking process where you go around the table, you have everybody. You have a facilitator that states a prompt to build about, and then people build metaphorical models that constitute their answer to it. So they'll storytell what their model represents. So that's their point of view, both from a cognitive, sometimes emotional point of view. But I think the main power of it is that it's a two-step process where you get what you want to say out through a meeting with yourself, and then it doesn't seem like a big hurdle to tell about it afterwards. So it feels less personal. It's about the message, not the messenger.
I think maybe for some people who are listening to this, it all sounds very ethereal. So if we could drive it down and talk about a case or organization that applied this and how they applied it and what the results were, that would be helpful. So is there an example of that?
Yeah, there is. We just finished working with a Danish transportation company who they had won a major new contract. They were basically doubling in size, which of course is a good thing. More revenue, more jobs, people moving into leadership positions, but the change process was still very, very hard for them because they weren't necessarily a particular mature organization. So what we did was to work with our simulation wall breakers about change leadership with every level of leadership. So we have had everybody at the organization, everybody in a leadership position play the simulation. They started out working with their own specific challenges from real life. Then they had some things. They got some homework, so to speak, going home and trying to work with different things. Then they came back a month later, and then we used a whole day playing this simulation. And in the simulation, you guide a group of employees through a change process, guide them through the startup, the implementation, the anchoring. And when we did that, we kept on linking what they did in the game to what they were doing in reality. So kept on making them more and more aware of, okay, you keep having problem with this kind of employee in the game. Do you have them in real life? How do you handle them in real life? And then also having a lot of conversation. But we used a lot with the middle managers, who were, of course, as you are in a change process, between a rock and a hard place, because they had employees demanding information, and they had senior management maybe just delegating to them.
When they're trying to change themselves while they're trying to guide other people.
Yes, definitely. So a lot of what we ended up with using the game for was making them more aware of how do I lead upwards. So how do I, as a middle manager, what do I ask for from senior management? How do I let them play me in, so to speak? How can I make them a better senior management by asking for the right things? Played it there. Then again, back home, homework, working with trying to do things differently in the organization. And then a month later, another intervention where we wrapped up a lot of what we talked about. And one of the primary focuses in Wall Breakers is about overcoming resistance. What are the leadership actions that I need to take to overcome resistance in specific employees? And then of course they went home and worked with that. But also one of the things we used it for was for a lot of leaders to acknowledge that they were in resistance themselves, because they were not particularly fond of the way that the senior management had been running the change process. So a lot of stuff became this safe space for them to talk about all these things that were frustrating them in their daily life, because none of these people had any experience in working with change. A lot of them didn't have any experience working with leadership. They just started out as a steward, and then they became steward managers. So it was a way of giving them a basic vocabulary, a basic set of skills to handle this change, and also giving them an environment where they could test out this vocabulary and these skills before they came back to reality and try to change things there. So with quite an immature organization, it really helped that they were able to have the safe space where they could try it out.
I like that. I like that very much. So when I'm listening to that, one of the questions that comes up in my mind is this concept of resistance. And there's a fellow, actually, he's also from Europe, who I listen to quite a bit, who says there's no such thing as resistance, there's just a logical reaction to a bad process. Is that So when I think of resistance, the word sounds like something to be oppressed. Something of
No,
But this has a different connotation. This takes it differently. Now that we caught you with water in your eye. Everybody refer to her the minute she takes a drink. Okay.
yeah.
What do you think about that?
No, but what do I think about it? I don't think that it is in any way is oppressed. I think the way that we facilitate this is very much based on the fact that you have a natural response to these different situations, and what you will see tonight is that we have this board game that is based on Rigmar's Circle of Change,
Okay.
where we have resistance level 1, 2, and 3. So what we work with is basically working with the employees on the level of, now it's called resistance, but it can also be a natural response, as you say, because level 1 is they need more information, they simply don't get the change, whereas level 2 is, I get it, I just don't really appreciate this, I don't really like it. And level 3 is where we say, I get it, but I don't really trust you to take me through this change. And I think it's fair to say that can be natural responses to a bad process. I think it's just a different label to the same reactions.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we always come back to is that resistance is natural, is because we have been cursed with having human brains, and human brains are terrible at change. So for people to develop new habits, for people to develop new things of doing their job, new ways of doing their job, they are going to resist that. The human brain's natural response to that is going to be trying to fall back into what it used to be, to do. So resistance is not something that comes from malice or comes from a lack of understanding. It comes from us being human, and you need to remember that as a leader as well, that you are not oppressing malicious employees. You are leading humans through change, and through that process you are going to overcome resistance. That's just the name of the game.
We also talk about having healthy conflicts. So having the constructive dialogue about what is actually going on. And that can happen if you have trust in the room. Then you can have healthy conflicts, and then you can move from there. Then you can actually move people in the right direction as well.
You can almost, they talk about nudging, it's almost like the same person I was referring to before that talks about adding milk to coffee, that it's a little bit of nudging, and then each time you add a little bit, you change the organization forever, and you're kind of nudging people along. But I also think about resistance. One of the things when I'm doing a project, I try and find the people who have natural resistance and amplify and try to understand what it is, because it might actually be proving
They might be right.
They might be right, right? There might be an actual reason for that.
Yeah.
So.
And I think one more point on that is that because we are so focused on involvement, we also advocate that the employees are as involved in the change process as possible, because a lot of the knowledge they have of daily operation needs to be part of the change process, and that is one of the things you do when you amplify resistance, is to say, but I want to listen to you. I want to listen to your resistance because I think that there is something valuable in that. Of course, I'm not going to accommodate everything, but I want to listen to it. I want to involve you in this so you can be part of it. So it's not just my vision, but it's our vision.
Well, and if you really want to combat resistance, and I'm using air quotes here, you involve people at the beginning in the designing of the change, which I think is a lot about what the Lego play is about. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, it's a lot about bringing out the tacit knowledge and expertise that people in the organization have.
I use tacit knowledge, and I always get people looking at me like, what are you talking about? What do we mean by tacit knowledge?
We mean all the types of knowledge that it's really difficult to articulate and put into words or write down or put into an equation.
Yeah.
So it could be...
It's what makes people really experts.
Yeah, and it could be a simple thing like riding a bicycle. It's really difficult to explain to someone in words, oh, this is how you do it, this is how you balance and so on. But you can show them, and through shared experience, you can transfer the experience of riding a bicycle. It might be having your dad run behind you in the beginning, but eventually you get it, and then you have a new skill. So a lot of of the experience people get from working in an organization in many years is they gather a lot of knowledge along the way. If somebody, a key employee leaves, they leave with all of their tacit knowledge, and the organization is usually going to suffer a little bit from having lost that.
Yeah.
So it can be a way of putting that into words through these experiences. And the dialogues in the games is another example of sharing tacit knowledge, sharing considerations, critical reflections on processes.
There's a fellow that I listen to quite a bit, and I'm avoiding names here, but he talks about the fact that all the knowledge is only available when there's context for that knowledge. So we don't know what we know until we're in the right context, and then we can draw from that context. And so I would assume, and again I'm making an assumption, that the games are about creating the context in which people can share knowledge. Would that be a good...
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Of creating a...
You look surprised.
Yeah, I think that's a really fun way of putting it. I learned something today now.
Yeah.
I'm going to take something away from this. No, but it's a really good way of putting it that we create the context for people, as I said in the beginning, to have these conversations. And because it's structured like that, we create that context for those conversations, for that knowledge to come out that people might not have if we just said, tell me what you know about this.
Yeah, and without that context, and the other part that he talks about, it's David Snowden. Do you guys know? Have you heard of David? Okay. What I like about what he's saying also is that people want to share their expertise, but they don't always know that they have the opportunity to share their expertise. And again, here, this might be a way of letting them know, yeah?
And they might also take their tacit knowledge and expertise for granted. They might not even know that that's a special thing, and that it can be useful in the knowledge synthesis process that's necessary for creativity, innovation, and value creation to occur. They might just have lived with that knowledge for so long that it's second nature.
Or they assume that everybody else knows what they know, or because it's so natural to them.
They forget that knowledge is invisible. So part of what we do is making it visible and creating the space for sharing it.
Okay, now I'm getting it. So you talked a little bit, what are we going to experience? So tonight we're having you in, so somebody we're having you in and showing how this works. What are we going to experience tonight?
You're going to experience that we have a room full of people that in the beginning will be very quiet and primarily looking at clouds, sharing a few slides about change and introducing the game, and then gradually the level of involvement increases, and as that happens, you will experience how people start talking, and there's this buzzing going on in the room that is just absolutely fantastic when you can hear people start to share their knowledge, and they share reflections, and they discuss. So even few sentences in the cards in the game can trigger something in one person that will make that person share something that will trigger something in another person, and it all comes from their experience and their viewpoints, and then you will see how they collectively agree or disagree on what would actually be the right approach for handling a certain employee. And in that process, there is so much learning and realization, because they learn a lot about their own preferences, their own style, and they also learn that there are so many other solutions out there, and there's not one silver bullet to how to handle a change process. So I think...
Despite what us consultants say,
I think we try to stay away from saying that we have the one answer.
Yes.
Yeah, but and I think that is important, to be able to observe and adapt to the environment. So this is going to be a disparate group. They're all coming from different places, different company, all that. Is that a different process than you would use when you're working with a team that's used to working together or sharing the same goal?
Yes, I think when we have a team where they have a shared goal, then the facilitation around the game will focus on their real world as well, and we can connect to that and make sure that they do that after each round. So as Klaus was also mentioning before, for instance, looking at the department and linking it to their own people and saying, okay, so where are we actually in the real world? This bus might be here with our people. That's the metaphor that we use in Wall Breakers. It's a bus full of people, which actually constitutes your department. And then when people, they don't want to be part of the change, they jump off the bus, and you have to get them back on the bus.
Okay.
And that you can...
You don't just drive off?
Yeah, and then you will see tonight that the bus will be heading down the road, and people will be left on the pavement. And then you have to figure out a way to get them back on the bus.
Okay.
And that whole metaphor you can very easily apply real life and say, okay, so how does it look for my team? How does it look for our organization? Who are these people? And very often people will be able to say, okay, I can recognize that this person here is equal to my employee X. And then they can sort of start from there and say, okay, so what can I actually do to get this person X on the bus again? And if they are doing it together with peer leaders, then afterwards they can also help each other because they have this common frame of reference. So they can discuss this and say, hey, my Anna, I think she's in resistance level 2 right now. Do you have any experience with that? Do you have some tips and tricks on how to get them out of that?
Okay. Sounds very interesting. I'm looking forward to it. Mm-hmm. It was interesting because we found out about this, I would say, from our perspective, last minute, and we put this together. And the funny thing is, we've got a lot of people who just signed up, which I'm very excited about it. A lot of them are folks from our responsive org group, which focuses on these type of things. But some of them are people who are just, I've never seen them before, so they'll be new to it. Now you've been traveling. Where have you been traveling to on this trip?
We've been to San Diego. We've been to Arizona.
Okay.
We ran a certification in San Diego where we certified a group of international clients, partners in running the game, so they can go out and use them now in their work.
And Camilla, you're one of those folks?
I'm one of those folks.
So if people are listening in Arizona and they want to do this, they contact you?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to post how they contact you.
I'll be happy to share.
Okay.
And if they contact us, we will say, call Camilla.
Okay. So you're essentially an affiliate or a certified provider of this?
Yes.
Okay. Here's my question. So as you go to different places in the world, do you find that different cultures accept this type of approach more than others?
Yeah.
And how do we here rank in that?
Around the mid.
Around the middle?
I think there are some cultures. Well, I think one of the things that you have to be prepared with our approach is that there's a lot of coaching involved. There's a lot of me asking, so how would this look in real life? What would you do in this occasion? What would happen then? Instead of me saying, okay, now I'm going to tell you what you're going to do. I'm going to give you a 3-step plan. That's not going to happen in our when we run our workshops. And depending on where you are, there's more or less acceptance of that. Some places people are used to that approach, used to being challenged like that. Some places people are more inclined to say, yes, but could you guys just give me the answer? What's the right answer here? And there is no right answer. And I think that's one of the main points, is that you need to look at the current scenario you are working with. You need to analyze the current situation you're working with, and be working from that instead of thinking that there is one answer that will work in every context. But I think people in the US are a bit more inclined to wanting the answer than
Or the
people.
5-step process.
What?
Give me the 5-step process.
Just tell me what I'm going to do to make this work. Than people in at least Northern Europe, where we are based. But I also think it seems like there's more and more of an acceptance of this approach, both in Europe and in the US. When we started out doing this, a a lot of time with a client was used on telling them, okay, no, games can actually do something. We are not going to come here and play Monopoly with your employees. This is actually going to have an impact on real life, and we don't have these conversations anymore because it's become so accepted that it works. So the conversation is more like, okay, we're going to do a game. What are we going to get out of it?
Yeah. Yeah. I do think it's interesting that in the U.S., whenever we're introducing new content, people want, just give me the 5-step process. I want to know the steps. I want to know the bullet points.
Yeah.
But there's no bullet points to this, is there?
Of course, there are some things you should be aware of at specific points in a change process, but it's much more about linking that awareness to people's real life and making them think those thoughts themselves within their context.
Mm-hmm. The other thing we tend to long for is, we want the practicality, we want the immediate result, the thing that I can go home and apply the next day. What am I going to get out of this?
But I think the tricky part is the people aspect of this, and then I don't think there is a 5-step process for dealing with people. So that's why we cannot give you a 5-step process. But what we can give you is a new way of thinking, so that you look at your employees in a different way, and that you are more, I would say, agile in the way that you look at your employees and acknowledge that each and every one are unique and probably have different recipes for going through the change in a satisfactory way. And that is where especially involvement is so important, because employees are human beings, and basic needs like being heard and seen and listened to is fundamental to also take ownership of what's going
That's
on.
all very fluffy.
Yeah, but still.
But
Why can't they just do what I tell them to do?
But
It's their job.
you asked about immediate takeaways.
Yeah.
What can I go out and do differently tomorrow? A lot of when we run this as a full workshop, not when we are showing it to you late at night, but when we're running it as a full workshop, we focus a lot on takeaways and what people should go out and do. So a lot of this is using the game to make an analysis of real life, using the analysis of real life to make an action plan. So you often end up with a very, very clear direction of saying, okay, now I have a better understanding of my employees, have a better understanding of this approach. Now I'm going to go home, I'm going to do these 3 things. I'm going to reevaluate them in a month in this way, and then I'm going to be, as Gitte says, agile about it and maybe change it up if it didn't work. So we focus a lot on people making action plans and being very concrete, because I think when I run a workshop and I ask people, okay, what are you going to go out and do differently? And people say, well, I'm going to communicate more. That doesn't mean anything. You can't look at it from a month from now and say, did I communicate more or did I not communicate more? Who are you going to communicate with? What are you going to say? What's your approach? What do you want? What outcomes do you want? So all these things are part of the facilitation of us as well, making people be as concrete as possible with what they are going to go out and do differently based on all the conversation that they had in the game.
And then you follow up with them and say,
yes.
How did you do that?
Yeah, and you sometimes we may have people follow up with internally, making reflection teams that meet up and give feedback to each other. That's all about the practicalities with the customer.
Okay.
Yeah, so Klaus, he twists their arm and say, you need to find a buddy.
Well, he's a big guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one of the requirements for being hired in the facilitator role. You have to be able to get a bit physical with the customers.
I can see Camilla doing that.
Yeah.
Some arm twist.
So it sounds like there's a lot of great stuff to be here. If I'm ready to do this and I want to do this, what should be some of the considerations that tell me that it's something I want to do?
Well, usually we have we have our clients think about 3 questions. Basically, what do you want to tell your employees? Is there something that you need this involvement to communicate directly to them? A new strategy, a new set of compliance rules, whatever it might be. The second question is, what do you want people to talk about? So when they are using the dialogue tools, what should their dialogue be about? What kind of scaffolding should we build for you to have the right kinds of dialogue? And what do you want your employees to tell you? Is that something you need to know how the implementation is going on, their ideas? How do you want to what do you want to take away from them? So it's not necessarily that you want a workshop that does all three things, but consider all three questions whether you're doing game-based learning or you are doing Lego serious play or however you want to involve people. So know what you want to tell them, know what you want them to talk about, and know what they should tell you.
Okay. Sounds good. So that leads me to another question. If I'm calling you and I want to do this, what am I signing up for? What's a typical program look like? Or if we talk to you, adapt the program, but what am I expecting to happen?
That depends on what you're purchasing. We run everything from 1-day workshops where we come out and use one of our generic tools to designing full leadership academies. We designed the new leadership academy for one of the largest Danish companies, one of the world's largest employers actually, where we designed from scratch all their new senior leadership training. So that depends on your need, what you can expect.
Big, broad array of things. Best thing to do is go to the website and see what you have.
Yeah, we have a bunch of cases of what we've done, where we can see some of the breadth of what we do, because it's always based on what the client needs.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you want to start just sort of small, then it's logging onto our simulation tools on the website, which are our standard tools that can be applied across companies and industries, where the context lies very much also in facilitation. So whatever situation the company is in can be built into the facilitation around the game.
So we talked about how companies would use Workz products and for change management. How would somebody apply, and what companies would use Lego Serious Play?
So the tool is a creativity and innovation tool, so it can really be used in a lot of different contexts. I usually call it content neutral. It's more like a language, helping to bring out knowledge in employees. One of the contexts that I've used it in has been with a crop science company, and they had a minimal viable product, and they had a pull from customers that were eager to buy it, so they needed to accelerate their innovation cycle to meet the customer need. Mm-hmm. So it was for an off-site workshop, a 2-day off-site workshop to have that group of experts work together more quickly and get aligned, create alignment around where they were going, and then create task forces that were focused on creating results.
Okay.
So they managed to do that.
And was there a result out of that you can speak to, or?
Well, my client said that they had managed to create 70% of the solution to one of the biggest pain points. So that was
Just in the workshop?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
So that was a huge acceleration for them.
Massive acceleration.
Yeah.
Very good. I ran innovation for a Fortune 50 company for a while, and it was amazing how long it takes people to get on board with things, and you're talking about cycle times sometimes of 18 months to even decide to do something, and the ability to accelerate that into weeks, days, or hours is of such tremendous value. It's hard to even explain what the level of return that you get from just that simple process.
I think a big part of the power is that it creates a reason to get everybody in the room face to face and have them start building that trust among one another and then start sharing knowledge.
And it can create, again, that safe environment.
Exactly.
It's safe to, somebody changed it when it was called safe to fail at one point, but it's really safe to try. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
We'll try different things. If they fail, great, because now we've actually eliminated something that we don't need to do. So, right? So.
Sir Ken Robinson said that if you don't ever take a risk, you never create anything original.
Mm-hmm. And somebody told me that, how many times did Thomas Edison have to try before he invented the light bulb? He only had to be right once, right?
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So now we have the part where I'm being told we have to make sure we get contact information. So let's talk first about Workz. How would we contact you guys?
The easiest way would be to log on to our website, which is www.workz.dk, and there are all our contact information and explanations about
.dk, we got to remember that.
.dk, not .com, .dk.
.com is and we won't talk about what it is. I went out there. So we'll be in the link below, so if people are listening, they can look below, and we'll also put it on the
Perfect.
screen.
Yes.
And then now you have people all over the world now who are to contact. So Camilla, if we're in Arizona, or what territory if we want to contact you?
Well, I'm doing a couple of things. So I have the different tools in my toolbox, the Lego
Okay.
Serious Play and the game simulations being two of them. And for that, I use my Camilla.Jensen or Jensen at asu.edu,
Okay.
my academic email.
Yeah.
And then I offer Lego Serious Play trainings. And for that, I use my Camilla at strategicplay.com.
Strategicplay.com.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have that also on the screen, and then the links below. Thanks for coming, and thanks for stopping by, and then
Thank you for having us.
having come into Arizona in our beautiful, you came at the right time. That's the
did,
important
we
part.
did.
So, all right, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.